These 5 real estate books have changed the way I invest. And if you take them seriously, they can pay you back for a lifetime. At least that's what I found for myself. I've not only read these books one time, I've reread them, I've underlined them, I've basically mined them for great ideas that I've been able to use in my real estate investing business and have paid me back over and over and over again. So in this episode, I want to share one big idea or story from each of these books so that you can take them and apply them in your own business. And I hope you find them as helpful as I have. Let's start with book number 5 on my list, The Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller, Jay Papasan, and Dave Jenks. This is a book I read shortly after I started investing in real estate back in 2003, and it was a game changer for me. It has so many good things, and I think the best part about it is the authors interviewed 100 plus millionaire real estate investors, and they basically synthesize all of the lessons they learned from those 100 millionaire investors and put them into one business model for real estate investing. And I think business model is really the key word that I took away from this book. There's an idea early in the book where they said, if you want to be successful at anything, you want to study how the people did the thing they do. Don't just look at the end result and the way the outcome they got. Look at the process. Like, what specifically did they do? And I remember there's one story that Gary Keller gave early in the book about he was having a breakfast every week or every couple of weeks with his mentor. And his mentor was very focused on asking him, what's your net worth? Have you been measuring your net worth? And he made him fill out a little spreadsheet where every week, I think, or maybe every month, he measured his net worth. And the reason he did that was a habit that this multimillionaire mentor he had did for himself. And he knew that if you measured your net worth regularly, what you measure is what actually happens, is what you try to improve. And so because he was measuring his net worth, he said, how can I make my net worth bigger? How can I grow it? That's what being a millionaire is. That's what being wealthy is you have this wealth that you can do other things with. You can turn it into cash flow. You can trade it for other things. And so just that one little simple idea, that was a model that the millionaire real estate investors did. And if you weren't a millionaire yet, you could copy them, you can model them. And so that's really what this whole book is about, from finding deals to financing them, to marketing properties, to managing properties, to eventually how do you turn the properties into multi-millions of income that you can actually live off of. Tons and tons of good ideas in there. Highly recommend it if you want to check that out and become a millionaire real estate investor yourself. Book number 4 on my list is called Zeckendorf. Let me read you the subtitle: The Autobiography of the Man Who Played a Real-Life Game of Monopoly and Won the Largest Real Estate Empire in History. This book is one of a kind, is fascinating. What I love about it is, have you ever wondered how deals are put together? Not just like the superficial story of it, but like the details, the numbers, the negotiation, the paperwork. How did this whole thing come together? Well, that's basically what this is, chapter by chapter. He tells stories of all his deals that he put together. He was a wheeler dealer extraordinaire, had a big vision, was bold, was really creative. Just the types of deals he put together. Just, I mentioned boldness, just the gumption to go do some of the deals he did. He built these big skyscrapers and big hotels and big buildings. And in fact, one of the buildings in Manhattan, which I'm not familiar with all the buildings today, but where the UN building is in New York, he put that kind of deal together. So just this, having this big vision is what a lot of real estate investors have to have, combined with the craft and the details. You'll love it if you just love those kind of details. But if I had to give one takeaway of this whole book, in addition to those creative details, was just how to survive as a real estate investor, or how not to survive. In the beginning of the book, Zeckendorf talks about the Great Depression of the 1930s in the United States. And there was 3 categories of real estate investors. The first category of real estate investor was so leveraged that they went out of business quickly. They had a lot of debt and they didn't have a lot of margin. They didn't have a lot of savings. A year or 2 in, they're out. And he said those people actually didn't do too badly. They just went ahead and lost their money. And then they got back in the game. They were managing properties for people, for banks and other people who took them back. They eventually did okay. They didn't have any net worth right then, but they survived. There was a second group of people who were on the opposite end of that, who owned all their properties free and clear. They had no debt. And yes, the properties went down in value by 70, 80%, but they survived because they didn't have any debt. Those people did pretty well in the Great Depression as well. The middle category didn't do well at all. They might have had 50% loan to value. So the properties were, if they were worth $1 million, they owed $500,000 on it. They thought they were conservative, but then they slowly bled to death financially during the recession. I found that so interesting. Like the people who are super conservative and super aggressive did okay. The other ones like bled to death slowly and didn't benefit during the Great Depression as much. That was interesting. But then Zeckendorf's own story by the end, he was wheeling and dealing and owned this huge empire of real estate. But by the 1960s, he also went out of business. And just the story for me was kind of the story of people who go big and try to get huge empires. It can go really well. You can have a boom, but it's equally likely that those people are going to go bust. And so it's one of the big reasons I like the small and mighty style of real estate investing. One deal at a time, safe. For most of us who are small real estate investors, we can read these books, we can learn a ton, it can be exciting, but in the application of our life, we should have boring investments if we really want to have the kind of life that gives us options and freedom and sustainability. That was a big lesson I took away from Zeckendorf, but fascinating read. Book number 3 on my list is Confessions of a Real Estate Entrepreneur by James Randall. You know how you read some investing or real estate books and they can be like really thick and you read it and you're like, this was like all fluff. Like they could have taken out half of this book and said the exact same thing. Well, this book is not that thick and it's the least fluffy book I've ever read. Super packed with information. It is kind of like the Zeckendorf book. It's a confessions. So it tells a lot of stories of the author James Randall's, his history, his career in real estate investing. He actually began as an attorney doing closings and transactions for other real estate investors. And he was like, hey, wait a minute, like I could make a lot more money being in the deal as an investor and entrepreneur. And so he got into the commercial real estate world. And a lot of this is written with a point of view of commercial real estate, but it can apply very well to small and mighty residential real estate, single family, duplex, triplex, fourplex, small multifamily like I own. One of the things I love about it, though, is that it assumes that you want to be a crafts person. You know, I highly respect the craft of any business. So if you're a mechanic and you just take pride in the mechanics of the engine and of your automobile, if you're a carpenter and you take pride in your tools and how do you use those tools, like I feel like real estate investing, the best real estate investors are also craftsmen or craftswomen. And James Randall wrote this book that way. For example, in chapter 3, it's called The Basics. And he just went through a vocabulary lesson, basically, of here are the ways you can own title on a property. Here's what LLCs look like. Here's what partnerships look like. Here's how you actually finance a property. Here's what a lease looks like. And that might, in some cases, that might sound dry, but the way he explains it and shows how it's applicable, and he just puts it in real world language, not a bunch of legalese, super, super helpful. That one chapter was like a master's degree for me. And there's a lot of other chapters like that as well on different topics within the real estate investing business. So highly recommend this one. This is one I'm actually, as I was rereading, preparing for this, I was like, I need to reread this book. It's been a while since I've read it and would love you to check it out and benefit from it as well. Book number 2 on my list is called The Real Estate Game by William Purview. It's called The Intelligent Guide to Decision Making and Investment. William Purview was a professor for many years at Harvard Business School, but he was also a practitioner. So he actually invested in real estate. He had his own deals. And to this day, as far as I know, he still owns properties. So he's kind of this mix of your teacher next door who's kind of helping you understand the basics and somebody who actually does it. And you're going to notice a theme here in the books that I like. He is someone who mastered the concept of case study teaching. So at Harvard Business School, they really mastered, and the way they taught a lot of the business school was, here's a case study, here's an example of a business. And he did that with real estate. And this book is really pretty much that. It's a lot of case studies, examples from beginners all the way to more advanced styles of real estate investing. And I love looking at business like a game. That's really what this book's about. It's like here's the game board, here are the different pieces of the game, here's how you play it. So that's how the book kind of reads, is understanding the strategy of a game called real estate investing. Probably the part of the book that I love the most and I've taken away and that I've taught myself a lot is this idea of the back of the envelope analysis of real estate investing. And I kind of knew this from listening to people like Warren Buffett over the past, that Warren Buffett would say he doesn't even use a calculator to make multi-billion-dollar purchases of investments. He's a pretty smart person, so maybe he doesn't have to use a calculator. But the point Buffett made and the point that Purview made in this book, and he had a whole chapter on the numbers of real estate, is that professionals who buy properties and investments, they often just do this back of the envelope math, which is often not very precise. Like they round up, they use kind of round, like in real estate investing, I use sometimes something called the 50% rule, where if a property rents for $2,000, I might say, 50% of that's going to be gone to operating expenses, taxes, insurance, maintenance, just to do some quick math. It's probably not right, but that's not the point. The point is to be approximately right, to quickly look at a deal so you can understand the assumptions, so you can understand what's going on, the principles of that deal. That's really what's important. And that's what professionals who understand how to analyze a deal quickly understand. They have these little quick back of the envelope rules or, rules of thumb that they use just to kind of get a read on the deal, to have a negotiation, to have a discussion. That doesn't mean they don't use spreadsheets. And Purview talks about using spreadsheets and analysis and those kind of things too. But with real estate, it's more like a stair step where you start with like the very basic kind of back of the envelope math. Then maybe you use a spreadsheet. Then you get it under contract and you do due diligence. So there's many steps of kind of peeling the onion back and doing more analysis. But he has a really good chapter on which numbers he likes to use. I often use something called a cap rate or unleveraged yield. He called it a return on asset in this book. It's something to this day, when I'm looking at a deal, I pull all the financing of the deal away and I just look at how much income does this property produce? And if I paid cash for it, what would the return be today, the yield from the income of the property? And I use that as a sort of goal for different types of properties. So watch some of my videos if you want to see how I analyze those deals. But a lot of what I learned, I got from this book, The Real Estate Game, but there's a lot more than just that in there. You could check it out and use some of the case studies to apply how you could do more deals and do them more intelligently as well. So we made it to the number one book on my list. But before I tell you that title, I do want to say I have a bonus book that I'm going to tell you about. So stick around to hear a little bit more about that. But my number one book is Building Wealth, One House at a Time by John Schaub. For those of you who watch my channel a lot or listen to my podcast, this is probably not a surprise. This is a book I gift to people when they want to get started in real estate investing or they want to take their investing to the next level. John's a friend of mine. He's a mentor. I've had him on the podcast a lot, so you can go back and watch some of my episodes with him. We talked a lot about Zeckendorf and multifamily and commercial real estate and becoming a multimillionaire investor, and all those are great. But I come back to John's book over and over again because of the simplicity of it. I find the best concepts, the best strategies are the simplest strategies. I think I heard a quote one time that said, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. John, in his career, has owned apartment buildings, I think, hotels, all sorts of big properties. I've done the same thing. I've owned bigger properties as well. But for him, he always comes back to the single family house, to owning. And as he says, that is my best investment. Still today, 5 decades into his career, he chooses to own 25, 30 single family houses as the core of his investment and financial life. Now, why is that? He says that houses are simple and easy to understand. That's a principle that Warren Buffett always talks about. Only invest in things that are simple and understandable. He likes houses because they're safe, because so many people own them and like them and understand them. They're easy to sell. Like if you have a property, you need to get rid of it, you can typically sell it to somebody, to your tenant, to another person. Not hard to find a buyer. He likes them because they're a hybrid investment. You can sell them to people who are emotional about buying them, but they also produce rent. That's a big benefit. Banks like loaning money on them. I also like one of the concepts that houses, if you have a portfolio of 20, 25 houses, as opposed to one big apartment building, it's kind of hard to take apart into pieces that one big apartment building. But if you want to sell off a property here or there and recycle some properties, it's much more flexible as well. So as wonderful as the go big, huge style of real estate investing is, I always come back to building wealth one house at a time, buying the simplest properties, having the fewest number possible. And his philosophy really inspired a lot of my own philosophy of the small and mighty real estate investor. And that actually brings me to the bonus book for this list, the book called The Small and Mighty Real Estate Investor. I didn't include this book in the top 5 list. Well, because it's my book. I didn't think that was fair. But you might notice if you read this book, and I do recommend my book, that there's a lot of influence from the 5 books that you've seen here. For example, The Millionaire Real Estate Investor interviewed 100 plus millionaires. I have a lot of case studies in between each chapter of real small and mighty investors with the real numbers, the real number of properties. So I took a lot of inspiration from that. I love the case studies. I love the stories of the author. So I share a lot of my own journey, the good, the bad, the ups, the downs throughout my journey. And of course, I share a lot of the small and mighty approach, step by step, small properties. And what I try to do in this book is to give you the handbook so that you can think about it like a hamburger or a sandwich. The meat of the book is all the tactics and how to do it, how to finance it, how to find the deals, how to run the numbers with back of the envelope style. I have a whole chapter on that. But then I wrap that in the whole strategy. What does a small and mighty strategy look like? How do you get to the point where maybe you have 10 or 15 properties free and clear, paid off? And what does it look like to go through the journey as a real estate investor, starting as a beginner, as a starter, getting to the wealth builder part of your journey, and then another third part of the journey I don't hear anybody else talking about, which is the harvester, the ender phase of being a real estate investor, where you actually finish the journey. What does that look like? How do you actually get to the point where you live off your real estate income? So if you like any of those topics, if you like this idea of the small and mighty style of real estate investing, this is a book that should also be on your list, and you can check it out. And I'll have links to this book and all of these books in the show notes and in the description below. And one final recommendation I have is I love reading books, and books, you can see I have a bookshelf here. I have bookshelves all over my house. So I'm a big fan of books, but then I'm also a fan of going beyond books and getting coaching and getting a community. And that is what I spend a lot of my time on. If you like the idea of the small and mighty real estate investor and want help applying that to your real investing life, I have a community called Rental Property Mastery. This is a place where I coach, where I teach, where I've attracted a community of other small and mighty real estate investors. It's an online community, but we also have an annual retreat where we get together in person. We have weekly activities and events. We have calls. We have group coaching calls. You can get one-on-one coaching from me. So if that's interested into you to apply these concepts that I teach here on the channel to your business and you're an intermediate to advanced investor, I recommend you check it out and apply to Rental Property Mastery. There'll be a link below where you can check it out, learn more details about it. And I'd love to hear from you and love to have a one-on-one call with you at some point to talk strategy about your own real estate investing business. Thank you so much for watching this video or listening. I would love to hear from you. Which of these books is your favorite, or do you have other books that are your favorite real estate investing books of all time? Let me know in the comments. I would love to read those myself and see what your favorites are. And thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next video.